and welcome. I am so excited for a very special episode of Spirits and Monsters of Old Seattle. I am joined by two amazing guests all the way from Sweden who are here to talk a little bit of insider knowledge of the Vaesen RPG. I am joined by the wonderful Tomas Härenstam and Kiku Härenstam. Please let me know if I mispronounced anything.
It's all good.
Yeah, that was close enough.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah.
I was going to say, I have no background in Swedish, so if I get anything wrong, definitely oh, nope.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no.
That was close.
Worries.
That was close.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, interestingly, I have heard so many different pronunciations of just the name of the RPG as well.
Yeah, me too.
Here in the States, we've gotten Vaesen, Vaesen, Vaesen.
Yeah.
So, double checking since I have the experts on. It is Vaesen, correct? With that kind of short A sound?
It's more like, it's
like between A and E. So
yeah, so it's Vaesen, really.
Vaesen.
So it's close to Vaesen.
Vaesen,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. But that works. Either works. So, yeah.
Well, I figured since I had the experts, I could make sure that I got it right this time.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I am so excited to talk to you both. You have so many credits throughout the whole Vaesen RPG line, from editing to adventure writing, and we have a brand new product that is coming out for Kickstarter backers in just a little bit, and is going to hit our retail next year for City of My Nightmares. So I would love to talk to you both a little bit about that, as well as your history with RPGs and folklore. Hopefully you're not getting too many meows behind me, as I have locked my cat out, and he is deeply protesting this now. So first, I would love to know, how did you both kind of discover RPGs? Did someone introduce you to them, or is it something that you found on your own?
Oh, so I think we have a bit of a different history. I was very curious about RPGs when I was growing up, but in my school, when I started out, there were mostly like boys groups playing RPGs, and they weren't really interested in actually having a girl joining them. So I basically sort of bought the RPGs that were available here in Sweden. I was like fascinated with that. And I forced my younger siblings to play with me. So for me, it took a while until I was actually able to start playing RPGs. And we have been playing quite a lot since we met each other.
Yeah, so that's for a while. Yeah, and for me, it's I was part of the there was a big boom for RPGs in Sweden in like the mid 80s, a couple of years after the US, but it took off like around 84, 85, and that's when I was first introduced to it. I got my first RPG as a birthday present from my father, who didn't have any clue what it was. I didn't know what it was, but me and my older brother sort of figured it out together, and yeah, it sort of just took off from there.
Fantastic. Now, of course, I have to ask, was that Drakar och Demoner that you were first introduced to, or another Swedish RPG?
For me, that was definitely Drakar och Demoner.
For me, that was actually my second game. My first game, the one I got for birthday, was another game from the same publisher called Mutant, which is their post-apocalyptic game, which was their second game, but my first game. So Drakar och Demoner was my second game, but they were all from... It was like the one Swedish publisher of RPGs back then, and yeah, they were sort of... That was all mainly what was available in all of the toy stores. It was everywhere back then, and then it took a bit longer to find out that there were actually other RPGs as well, and RPGs from America, and it's like a whole... When you found these hobby shops that had like hundreds of RPGs, that was like a whole new world opening up. So, but yeah, the first one was Mutant and Drakar och Demoner.
Yeah, I love that the American publishers tried to bring Dungeons and Dragons to Sweden, and everyone was like, D&D? We have D&D. Why do we need your D&D? We've got one, and it's got so much.
Yeah. I think that was a bit of clever marketing there from that publisher. He was an intern, the guy who started that company, one of them, an intern at Chaosium, like in the early 80s, and he brought back their style of gaming. So actually, Darker Demoner is actually, well, the first edition was actually a translation of Fantasy World. I think it was called, like, one of the very early Chaosium games. It's close to RuneQuest in sort of the game
I
design.
was about to ask if it was similar
Yeah,
to
yeah.
RuneQuest in
So,
that.
and that's why both Dr. Moon and Mutant were sort of mechanically close to like RuneQuest and basic role playing, and it
Mhm.
sort of all comes from there. But then I
Yeah.
guess they took the name Drakar Demoner, which means dragons and demons, but obviously it's very close to another D&D,
Yep.
and that I think that, and then that just took off and dominated the market. So it meant that when D&D, I mean, there were a few people playing the actual D&D before that, but it was very small, and it was not like readily available. It was not in
Mhm.
Swedish, and it was sort of not that
It was a very
available.
niche kind of game.
Yeah. So the Swedish Drakar Demoner, the Swedish D&D was the one that took off, and then just continued to dominate
Mhm.
the RPG space for at least the whole of the 80s and 90s, and now it's much more of a mixed bag. But then it was
It is. I
definitely
mean, our son is 16, and they have a role playing sort of RPG group at his school,
yeah,
and they are actually playing Dungeons and Dragons.
yeah,
So
mostly
that's
Oh,
anyway.
okay.
mostly
Yeah.
and also they want to do it in English. So it's a sort of a
Right. I mean, it's
Mm.
very global now.
combination.
So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
now, well, they play different games, but yeah. So that's now it's much more of a mixed thing. So yeah.
yeah.
I was going to say, do you ever just kind of push the Dragonbane starter set over onto the table, be like, "Oh, how did
Yeah,
this
I
get
was sort
here?"
of discussing it. Just like, you can always, why don't try this one and see what happens. Yeah, so
We've got
yeah,
some
no,
beautiful custom dice, and look at these cards.
Yeah, exactly.
exactly. No, no. So
No,
it's
but
no,
I
they played a bit of Dragon Bane with their
yeah,
friends as well. So
yeah.
it's a bit of each. Yeah,
Now, and our
Hmm.
kids have been playtesting a lot since
yeah, that too.
they were
Hmm.
big enough to play. So I think that they are well versed in the free league
Oh yeah.
game sort of
Oh,
opportunity.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, since you both do have such a history with role playing games, this is something I'm just personally curious about, and I'm sure our listeners will be too. Do you have any favorite RPG characters you've played over the years?
Yeah.
So my favorite has to be a character that I created when we played a long campaign that lasted over a couple of years of Mutant Year Zero. So she was called Violet, and she was sort
Oh
of
yeah.
this a bit of like a nerdish but still quite brave character
Mm-hmm.
who I played for a long time, and I think we had like these long pauses also in between gaming meetings.
Right.
So you started actually writing a journal in that character's name
Yeah.
to just remind us of whatever
What
happened,
had
like on the
happened like
Mm-hmm.
last
last,
time.
yeah. And we even sort of got uh, our first our daughter was actually born during
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
campaign, so it sort of lasted over a very long time. So that is character that I have a very close sort of
Yeah.
emotional connection to.
So we have it turned into like a printed chronicle of the
Yeah,
campaign that's actually sort of, we
Mm-hmm.
have it in the bookshelf. So it's like this character's chronicles.
yeah.
So that's,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
that was
amazing.
over a period of at least 3 or 4 years, I think. Yeah. And yeah, yeah, yeah. And my curse is that I'm sort of the almost always the game master, which means of course I do have, I'm a player sometimes, but that's usually for like shorter one shots and
Mm-hmm.
shorter things. But when it comes to longer campaigns, I've almost always been the game master, which means I don't have those characters that I've been playing for a very long time. It's just that I was always the GM, so that's sort of
I can sympathize completely. That is the story of my life.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, same thing here.
But you've done some quite cool characters. I
Oh,
remember the Baron, the Mammoth Baron that you played in
right.
Nordholmia,
Yeah,
one of the mutants. You
it
sort
was
of,
a mutant mammoth,
yeah,
like yeah, for in the yeah. That was a fun character to play. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
yeah. It was
But it
cool.
was only one of many NPCs. So yeah, but yeah, that was
Mm.
one of the more memorables for sure. Very loud, booming voice,
Oh, absolutely. It was like
and
magnificent.
very annoying as
Yes,
well.
yes.
I mean, those are the best NPCs. Those are the
Mm.
ones that always carry on.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Now, question for you specifically, Tomas. As you made kind of the Year Zero engine, obviously a big inspiration for that was building out your version of Mutant.
Yeah.
That is a very dice pool oriented game with 6-sided dice.
Yeah.
Can you talk about kind of the shift from that classic percentile version of games like Chaosium did
Yeah.
into going to that and what inspired that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, like I mentioned, the tradition in Sweden was the BRP style, the RuneQuest style percentile
Hmm.
system. That was sort of the dominant thing in the 80s and 90s. But I
Hmm.
think for me, I was always interested in mechanics and rules. And I think the first one that sort of showed something different was the Star Wars D6
Mm.
game, because I started exploring and other games, not in US games and British games and everything, and I sort of found different systems, and I think the Star Wars D6 one made a real
That was the
mark
one from West End Games, right?
from West End Games, definitely. So that made a big. I just figured, you actually can do things differently, and that sort of
Mm.
stayed with me. And then another sometime later, that was in the early 2000s, I was super inspired by the whole indie forge movement of games, and there were lots of games who had like dice pools, and
Hmm.
D6 based systems. And so that sort of, back then, it was a big sort of inspiration that you can actually do this with like normal D6s. You don't
Hmm.
actually need the. Now
The
I can,
D20s, the
yeah, you don't actually
D100s.
need
Yeah.
that stuff, but now I kind of enjoy that too. But back then I felt like this is pretty cool. You can actually do this with just like normal Yahtzee dice or whatever. So that was just where I was. And from the Star Wars thing, and then the indie games that use that. I think that's just where my head was at that time.
Yeah.
It was like games like Fate and Mouse Guard and things, and they all pretty much used like some form of dice pool D6
Hmm.
type systems, and that's sort of the inspiration came from for Mutant Year Zero, which then and we felt we wanted to do something very different from the earlier. There had been a couple of editions of Mutant before, so we felt this one we wanted to do in a
This was
different
really going
way.
to separate it and be its own
Yeah,
unique kind of thing.
exactly. So that's sort
Hmm.
of why it turned out that way.
Fantastic. And a question for you, Kiku. In the preface to City of My Nightmares, you talked a lot about the magic of your hometown of Stockholm. What are some of the most fantastical and inspiring places in Stockholm from when you grew up?
Oh, I mean, Stockholm is a city that's it's sort of teeming with history. I think that one of the most magic things that I experience now and as a child is actually to walk through the old city, old town of Stockholm, because
Hmm.
there is so much history. I mean, literally underneath the tiles that you're walking on, there are catacombs of
Ooh.
cloisters from the Middle Ages. There are a lot of churches, a lot of sort of history, a lot of that has happened within those streets. So I think that is
Mhm.
really a magical part of the town, but also the closeness to water. I mean, we have waterways that, like in the center of Stockholm, you can go by boat
Oh, wow.
when you're commuting. So it's
Hmm.
this combination of nature and also with that sort of unique history and sort of
Yeah.
all of the centuries of people that have moved into this city and made it their own. So I think that is truly inspirational, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, it's such a different experience talking about the history of a place here in the US versus anywhere in Europe. Because here in the
Oh
US,
yeah.
we're like, oh, this is very old. It's from the 1900s. And everyone laughs in Europe when I say that. But they're like, oh, that
So
it's so new. And I'm like, no, this is very old for us. This
I
building
think
is 50 years old.
I think it's just
Yeah,
different things, but I also
yeah.
think that
Hmm.
I mean, even within our own walls of our apartment where we live, the house has been here since like the end of the, I guess,
17th century, I think.
17th century,
1600
yeah,
something.
16,
Yeah.
1600 something.
Yeah.
So as soon as you sort of start redecorating or doing anything, and you sort of wake up the floors or do something, then you find all of this old stuff. So
Hmm.
you're really just a guest sort of passing through the house rather than owning it or renting it in any way. So
Oh, I love that. Here in Seattle, we would definitely say, like, this is the old town. It's from 2005. No one has changed it since then.
Yeah.
So I'd love to jump in and talk a little bit about Vaesen specifically. Now, obviously, a big part of the book is the art by Johan Egerkrans. Um, did he reach out to the team at Free League about taking his book Vaesen and turning it into an RPG? Or did the folks at Free League reach out, or was it a little bit more mutual back and forth?
Yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, actually, we I think we reached out to him originally, but that was a long time ago. It was actually um, more than 10 years ago, like
Oh,
very
wow.
early in the
Mm.
Free League days, like
Mm-hmm.
2013. I mean, because we started working with Simon Stollenhag and we published his art books. That was very
Mm-hmm.
early. It was like 2014, something like that. And around that time, we also reached out to Johan because he published his Vaesen, the art book, in 2013, I
Yeah.
think. So this was a year or two after that. So 10 years ago or something. But then nothing really came of it originally. I don't really remember why. I think he had other things, we had other things. And then it took a
Mm-hmm.
couple of years. That idea just sort of stayed there. And we
Yep.
had some mutual acquaintances, and for some reason, a number of years later, we actually had a chance to actually make this happen. But so,
Yeah.
and it did. But I think that we reached out to him, if I remember
Mm-hmm.
correctly. He was very much into it, and he doesn't play RPGs that much. He does sometimes actually,
Mm.
but he's more of a sort of miniatures player, and he paints like minis and things. So he's into that. But
Mm-hmm.
he has a long story of a history of role playing. So he knows what it is, and he's very
Yeah.
much into that. So he was a very good fit to work with him, and very easy because he knew completely what we were trying to do and why. So and it was
Mm-hmm.
a really good match. I think that worked out really well for both of us.
Yeah, I remember reading that one of his big inspirations in making the Vossen art book
Yeah,
was in the old monster manuals
yeah,
for
Yeah.
Drakar och Demoner.
Yeah.
yes,
And just loving going through those and looking at like the ecology of the monsters and the
yeah,
history and feeling how complete it was and real it was.
yeah, definitely.
Now, speaking a little bit about Chaosium games, one of the big reference points I often see online when people are talking about kind of the vibe of Vaesen and the atmosphere is Call of Cthulhu. And I always feel like that's kind of good, but kind of misses the mark.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of the differences between folk horror that the Vaesen RPG does and cosmic horror, like in Call of Cthulhu?
Yeah, I mean, you can probably fill in, but I think just from my mind, I think the main difference is that which I think is enjoyable. I mean, Call of Cthulhu is a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
played it a
Hmm.
lot and I love it. But it has that cosmic horror where you will probably go insane and die or something.
The best case scenario is you go insane and leave the adventure.
That's sort of the idea, and that can be really cool. But I think what's different in Vaesen is that you can actually there are some rules. You can figure it out. The
Hmm.
creatures you encounter are actually they have some purpose and they have some agenda, and there
Mm.
is a way to figure that out. So you're sort of there is actually they're not just purely cosmic entities which you
They're
can
not
never understand.
unknowable.
They're not unknowable. They're quite knowable, and they're
Mm.
much more human, which makes them a bit more relatable. Which is a different. It can still be horrifying, but they're a bit more understandable, I guess. At least most.
Hmm.
Mm. No, I agree. I think Call of Cthulhu can be, I mean, really enjoyable to play. I think, and there are a lot of overlap in the love for that time period and that
Yeah,
whole aesthetic of gothic horror and the sort
Hmm.
of clash between the rural society with the modern society and technology that is sort of starting to develop. So there are a lot of I think elements that are
yeah,
common. I think what fascinates me with Vaesen is that it also has this history of where there are places that are magical and where there are
Hmm.
Vaesen inhabiting those places, and where a lot of the stories that we try to tell with the mysteries that we write actually have a close connection to like places or historical events that have meaning to us as well. I also like how the Vaesen can have their own agency in different ways, and where the sort of right way to sort of solve something is not always to just try and kill the Vaesen that you
Kill the
encounter, but
monster.
to actually
Yep.
try to sort of understand what's driving them,
Mhm.
and sort of taking it from there instead. So, but they're both similarities and I think differences.
Yeah, and I think
In that
maybe
aspect.
in the sort of Cthulhu tradition, at least going back to Lovecraft and his stories, the sort of the Cthulhu entities and these. I mean, he also wrote it was sort of the modern, like the new modern times versus the old times. But I think the
Yeah.
sort of Cthulhu creatures were more of a symbol of the new and
Hmm.
strange and
Yeah,
different,
yeah,
whereas the creatures of Vaesen are the opposite of that. They're actually the old traditions. So they're sort of the flip side in a way of what the Cthulhu
Hmm.
mythos creatures are, and they're both enjoyable, but I think they're
Oh,
quite
of course.
different
Yeah.
from each other. So yeah, I enjoy both, but they're and a lot of writers, like we have some writers, some freelance writers, others who
Hmm.
write for Viz, and they also usually sort of write for Cthulhu as well. They're sort
yeah,
of it's very
yeah,
close. So it's just I think it appeal, even though they're quite different in a way. I think both games appeal to sort of the same type of gamers because they have that period piece thing and the investigation thing, and so there's a lot of common ground as well. So yeah,
It
different
it almost
but
feels
this,
like a Venn diagram between the two,
yeah,
where
yeah,
yeah,
there are
I
some
agree.
really, really similar things and then some wildly different things.
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
totally agree.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, since I've got you both here, I need to ask, what are your favorite Vaesen featured in the game? And are there any supernatural or folklore creatures you want to see in future expansions?
Oh, how much time do we have?
As much as you want.
One of my absolute sort of I can't say favorites. One of my greatest fears, actually. I grew up being a very sort of imaginative child, and I grew up with quite a superstitious grandmother who would actually tell me a lot of like stories that I
Hmm.
now, as a grown up, understand were maybe more Vasen stories than actual stories. But I think that the Swedish Vasen myling is, I mean,
Hmm.
really frightening. I mean, I would, as I was sort of hurrying home in the dark, sort of autumn evenings from like basketball training or something like that, I would be like horrified to walk past like churches or other things because maybe a myling would jump on my back and demand to be carried to hollow ground. So that is a Vasen that has stayed with me for a very long time. So that would definitely be one of them.
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
yeah. For me, I don't know. It's. I think one of them we haven't actually done yet. We've done quite a few already. But there are some that have not appeared yet. I think Skogsrå is one of them. Is a wooden. It's a wood.
Yeah.
What do you? I don't even know the English name anymore. But it's sort of a creature that lives in the forest and
Hmm.
is quite sort of enticing. But then they can lure you off to bad things.
Yeah, it's sort of like a dryad in a way
Yeah.
because it's sort of
Hmm.
tied to certain trees and
Yeah.
it's sort of a creature.
So I'm looking forward to get it because that's one of the ones I know I sort of keep track of because we've published quite a few mysteries now and included quite a few different versions, but not that one.
Yeah. No, and for me, sort of writing, I would love to write something in the Mythic Britain sphere because there are
Hmm.
so many vast and just within the fairy realm that are, I think, sometimes like a bit more ferocious and sort of primal than the Swedish
Hmm.
Nordic. I mean, sort of fascinated with the, brutal red caps, for example. I mean,
Hmm.
there's sort of this, almost like embodiment of this fear of being hunted by something and the ferociousness of those creatures. I think, as in sort of horror stories, I think is something really intriguing. So I would definitely want to sort of think up a story around like some type of fairy realm creature. So
Hmm. Yeah, I loved the artwork associated with the red cap in the Mythic Britain book.
yeah,
Yeah.
That one just jumped out.
yeah,
And the Mealing is actually what I will always reference when anyone's like, oh, well, it's just like fairy tale creatures in Vaesen, right? I'm like, well,
Maybe not.
when you flip through the book, you'll see this, and it will immediately pull you in.
Yeah.
One way or another, you're going to have an opinion on this book after that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Now, this might obviously be a spoiler, but Tomas, are there any Vaesen that you want to see in future supplements?
I mean, beyond the Skogsrå that I mentioned, I
Yeah.
think one thing that we would like to do. It's not sort of decided, but I mean, there is so much of the Nordic folklore here to invest to sort of explore, and that's a lot of fun. But we've also done like two the Mythic Britain and then the Mythic Carpathia, and we have some ideas for further geographical source books that sort of expand. That would be a lot of fun to look at that. We'll see if that happens. I used to live and work a little bit in the Middle East earlier in my life, so I figured there's something along those lines would be fantastic to do at some point. But we'll see. There's a lot to do, so yeah.
I've got some
maybe.
questions coming up in our interview on that topic, so
all right.
we'll revisit that in a minute.
Okay.
Now, another question about kind of the Vaesen role-playing game. Last year, Quentin Smith of Quinn's Quest and Shut Up and Sit Down gave the Vaesen RPG a little bit of a mixed review, stating how he loved the setting and the feel of Vaesen, and yet he and his players had missed some of the details and mechanics and struggled with some of the elements of the rules. Did his review partially inspire the creation of the upcoming Vaesen starter set and the Codex Occultum, or was that a product you guys already had in the works?
Actually, that was sort of part of it. It was. I felt that review was really interesting to follow. I don't agree with everything, obviously, but that's fine.
Same.
That's fair. But there were some good points. I think one thing that we had, I think it's stated in the rule book that you can use the art book, the original art book, as a reference book. To sort of, because that's sort of a lot of fun that you can sort of play the game and use that book to flip through and actually look for clues, since the folklore in the game is actual folklore, so you can read a book of actual folklore, and that will actually help you to play the game. But we also realized that but maybe not everybody will have access to the art book or other books on Nordic folklore. You can't really expect people to have that. So that was one of the criticisms that players don't really have the frame of reference and don't have the resources to understand these creatures, and that's why we added that's part of the reason we added the Codex Occultum to the starter set. So there is actually a condensed codex of Vaesen, so you can actually sort of look that up and use that as you play and say, okay, this has been happening, and that fits with this creature but not that one, or maybe it's this one, and that can be a lot of fun. And that's really what we intended to be done with the art book. But now you don't need the actual art book to do that. You can just have the book that from the starter set instead. So I think, and that turned out really well. So I think it was a really nice addition. So that part is partly, definitely that was sort of spurred to some extent by that review.
Yeah, I feel like the Vaesen line has been so successful and has had such a worldwide appeal. And you can correct the record if I'm wrong on this one, I feel like it was very much written for a Swedish audience.
Yeah, originally, it's
or at least a
Nordic audience, at least, yeah.
I mean, when we started thinking about the game, we didn't see it as necessarily a game that would work internationally, because it is focused on Nordic folklore, which is a bit and not familiar to everybody. So that was a very nice surprise that it actually has done very well outside of here as well. And I think the artwork speaks for itself. I think the stories are, and I do think the game, I didn't write the game, so I can actually say this. I think the game works really well in the way mysteries are structured and things like that. So,
absolutely.
Generally, that was still a nice surprise that Vaesen has done so well outside of Sweden and the Nordic countries.
Now, and just like the amount of sort of fan created content that is available, I think speaks to this sort of I don't know, that is really sort of sparked. And I think that Nils Hinse did a very good job in actually writing the core book in a way where you would be sort of invited to start writing yourself. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and also, I think that that sort of mixture of Vaesen with actually finding places that are close to your heart and sort of narrating a story around that, I think has really appealed to a lot of people.
Yeah, and not only here, but also, I mean, there's like a Mythic Japan
Yeah.
third-party book there, and then
Mm-hmm.
there was a team in the Ukraine who wrote like Mythic
Yep.
Ukraine, and they are now the main writers or part of the writing team on the Mythic Carpathia book.
That's amazing.
So that's really cool. Just to, to sort of that has even in a country that like the Ukraine where people have other things on their mind. This can still be maybe something to do and inspiring and a chance to think about something
Mm-hmm.
else. So that has been very cool to see how things have been not only around here but across the world. So many people doing great community content for the game. That's been really amazing.
Yeah. Obviously, that speaks to me very much as well, having a Vaesen RPG actual play podcast
Mm.
Yeah,
based in the Seattle area,
yeah,
which clearly not located in a Nordic country, but
yeah,
has those Nordic influences because we
Oh
had
yeah.
so many Scandinavian immigrants.
yeah,
And so much of those stories are worked into our local community, where we've got images of sea serpents, we've got tomta that are
yeah,
all over
Yeah.
the
yeah.
place in Christmas,
Right.
and so it feels that kind of Nordic connection and that sense of
Hmm.
place.
Yeah, definitely. That's very cool.
So you actually just jumped ahead a question on me because I was just about to say we've had two major world books released for the UK and Ireland and Carpathia. We've had two adventure books for Wicked Secret and Seasons of Mysteries. And now we've got two full campaigns, Lost Mountain Saga and the upcoming City of My Nightmares. Do you have any idea if this trend might continue, or we'll do one world book, one mystery compilation, and then a campaign? Or do you have other types of books you might think of for this game line?
I mean, we've been discussing it a bit. I think because you and me are right now, I think we are the ones who are doing most of the Vaesen sort of work and planning and things. So, but yeah, one thing we've been discussing is another geographical book that
Mm-hmm.
could potentially cover like parts of the Middle East. That would be
Mm-hmm.
very cool. I think we would need to, like we did with Mythic Britain and Mythic Carpathia, to team up with writers
Mm-hmm.
from that region, but since it is tied to local folklore, we feel it's really
Mm.
important to tie it, to sort of
Mm-hmm.
not come in completely like,
From
we
an
want to
outside perspective.
exactly. So you want
Mm-hmm.
to, treat it, give it the right treatment. But yeah, that's one thing we've been talking about. But then there are some other things as well. Like there was been a campaign book planned for a long time by Nils Hintze, who wrote the core
The
game.
core book. Mm-hmm.
He's been planning a campaign that sort of continues the introductory adventure, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's in the works as well. So we'll see how that turns out. But that's another thing that's on the horizon.
Mm.
I guess those are the two. And then we've been talking about also doing more about in the Mythic Britain region, like
Mm.
more
Mm-hmm.
mysteries placed there. That's another thing that we have. I think mainly you have some ideas for mysteries with fairies and stuff. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
have a lot.
yeah,
I have a lot of ideas, but I'm really looking forward also to Hinse's campaign book. I think a lot of people have been anticipating that for a long time.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Also, so I'm looking forward to sort of getting his sort of draft and reading that. But I think it's this balance between sort of doing new stuff and at the same time also curating the sort of already published
Mm-hmm.
geographical sites, because it's less I think an issue of trying to cover as much ground as possible, and more sort of finding like really interesting stories to write. I
yeah.
think
Yeah.
yeah.
In that same vein, how has it felt to see Vossen kind of expanding around the world? There are obviously, like you mentioned, items on the Free League Workshop for Mythic Japan. There's also, I believe, a Mythic Silk Road and a Mythic
Yeah.
Canada that's out there.
Oh
How
yeah.
does it
Yeah.
feel to see Vaesen kind of growing around the world?
I think it's just amazing to sort of see and read. I do read a lot of things. I was just thrilled also about the live role playing stuff that is coming out, because I think it's also showing people how to do RPGs. I think there are a lot of people coming
Hmm.
into the hobby that are still sort of, as I was as a child. It's quite enigmatic actually if you just pick up a book and to sort of imagine what it's like to be playing. I think it's wonderful to just have. I have had so many conversations actually on different conventions with people just telling me sort of their Vaesen stories, but it's always like mixed with their family history. So usually there are a lot of people like mixing stuff from their own sort of family lore with those folklore things. So I think it's I think that's the beauty with the hobby of RPGs, that it's really co-created, and you get all of these like creativeness that just so I think that has been amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, just I think that's one specific thing for this game, that it really encourages you to dig where you are and find those that folklore, but also local lore in the region where you live, or at least some place that you know well. I mean, I've done it. I did the ones I've written, or a lot of them are based on like my family history or places I've spent as a child or where I live now. And I think for a lot of writers for Vaesen do the same, that you sort of dig where you stand and just find all the cool stories that are actually all around you. And this game, since it's based on actual history and actual folklore, even though it's a fantasy game, it's still sort of it encourages you to actually go out and find what's around you and turn that into an adventure.
Mm.
And how it so seamlessly blends real history with fantastical
Yeah.
history with fantastical creatures and
Yeah.
intermixes it all in such a fun way. Now, one question I have been really hoping to ask you, there is a Vaesen supplement called, I'm going to butcher this name because I don't speak a lick of French, uh, Le Alce Mythique by
Oh yeah.
Arcane
Yeah.
Asylum.
Yeah.
Is there ever a plan to translate that into English and or Swedish from French and have it become an official Vaesen expansion?
Good question. I think we talked about it. I mean, generally we have some local partners. This
Mm-hmm.
is the French one. It takes place in Alsace, so it's the area between Germany and France. That the French publisher did. And normally we sort of they do like not too many local original things. Mostly they translate like the
Yep,
official
into
stuff. But
French.
they
Yep.
exactly, but they do. I mean, we kind of encourage. I think it's fine that they do some of their own local stuff. So we have discussed it, but it's a big undertaking. So we haven't really
Mm-hmm.
decided on whether to go forward with that or not. Since we have our own things planned as well. So
Yep.
and maybe that particular one, since it's set in that region of France, that is something that works really well for the French audience. Maybe it could be a lot
Mm-hmm.
of fun for others as well. But yeah, so it's not a no, but it's not something we're working on right now. So we'll
Okay.
see if
Maybe,
there's a
maybe a
chance.
future Kickstarter, perhaps?
Maybe, yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
I am just saying, as a Vaesen fan, I will take everything. All of it. Right in. 100%
All
day
right.
one backer.
Okay. That's fantastic.
Now, a question specifically for Kiku. In your mystery Song of the Falling Star, you strongly featured Finnish folklore and the musical instrument the kantele. Can you
Yeah.
talk about the inspiration for that adventure and what made you want to explore myths and folklore of Finland?
So it's actually my Estonian heritage. So
Oh,
the
okay.
Finnish and the Estonians and the Finnish Ugrian sort of people share a lot of the folklore and the history. And the Finnish Ugrian sort of language groups, and people have been living in that area of Finland, Estonia, and a bit south of that for many thousands of years. So for me, it was actually my Estonian roots that was sort of the inspiration for that.
Because you're fully, I mean,
my parents and grandparents, both from my mother and father's side, came to Sweden during the Second World War. So my family sort of relocated here in Sweden in 1944. So that's part of my family heritage. And there are a lot of similarities because it's sort of a shared cultural element. So both the kantele as an instrument, but also the sort of myths and the folklore that is very much shared between the Finnish and the Estonian and the Finnish-Ugrian sort of peoples. So that is actually why I pursued that, both in Song of a Falling Star, but also in the adventure The Winter's Tale, which is also set in sort of eastern part of Estonia, but that was then actually inhabited by people that spoke now sort of dead languages of Votish and another dialect. So that was I think for me it was a true pleasure to be able to delve into that history and to sort of also in a way tell a small bit of my family's history by choosing places that were where my families actually lived. So that was
so very similar to what you guys were talking about earlier of reconnecting the stories to your own family and your own history.
Yes, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And a question for you, Tomas. Silver of the Sea is one of my go-to recommendations when people want to get a feel for a Vaesen mystery. However, it's got a really deadly ending on there. Not to spoil anything, but
that's almost borderline cosmic horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, borderline, not many people are making it out.
Yeah.
Gonna probably lose at least 1 to 2 investigators on that one.
Yeah, that's true.
When you wrote that scenario, was it kind of expected for one-shots or convention play, thinking of it as a good way to introduce people to the game? Or do you think looking back on it, you might scale back some of that deadliness in that finale?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I mean, if you want to keep playing. Yeah. No, I don't know. It wasn't planned that well. I mean, the plan was not to have all the investigators all die. That was not really the idea. It was supposed to be, and like you mentioned, it's actually, speaking of Call of Cthulhu, that particular I don't know if you can go into spoilers here, but that particular creature at the end has sort of a cosmic horror feel to it.
Oh, very much so.
Because that creature is not, that is not a creature you can talk to and reason with. It's more of a, the huge being from the depths.
Almost an environmental hazard in a way.
Yeah, so that's actually more, and I guess maybe that's why it sort of leans a little bit into that tradition that is actually so no, it was never, and it's the whole inspiration for that adventure is that was also the part of the Swedish West Coast where I spent my summers as a kid and later, and just going out, that's inspired by when you go out with a boat like as far as you can, and when the islands disappear and there's just the sea, and that sense of awe of being there, at the edge of, when
the world
land,
in some ways.
At the end, it feels like the end of the world, and just having that creature sort of embody that feeling. Maybe that carried me. I got a bit carried away.
Yeah, when I was teaching my players Vaesen for our podcast, I actually ran Silver of the Sea. We only lost one of them.
No, that's good.
But in that dramatic reveal at the very end, they were like, oh no, we have so underestimated how dangerous this is going to be.
Yeah.
And Kiki, you talked a little bit about this one. A Winter's Tale is an adventure I've seen on a number of actual play podcasts. You talked a little bit about the inspiration on kind of connecting that to, again, some of those family roots. Can you talk about why you think it makes such an appealing adventure for one-shots and for placing it into ongoing campaigns?
So I think, I mean, when I wrote it, I was sort of inspired by that whole region in Ingria. During that time, actually, was very much like the Wild West of
Mm-hmm.
that region. So there were these harsh winters, and that whole setting, I think, reminded me very much of sort of that type of situation where you have a group of people stranded in a remote place. You have a possibility of a lot of investigation, but you're secluded sort of in this very narrow place. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that those are things that made it fun to write, but also to think about. So what would actually happen, and to sort of create that urgency with the Vaesen, sort of in a way, sort of giving life to that place, so where you have to like really try and find out how to sort of solve the situation. But at the same time, I mean, I think for some groups it has been really like very much as a sort of saloon situation
Mm-hmm.
happening with shootouts and stuff. So I think the inspiration for me was a lot like from the Cameroon and other sort of narrative stories like that, where people get sort of caught together in a place,
Mm-hmm.
and where different stories about sort of Vaesen are actually playing one part of that history. So
Mm-hmm.
in a way, it was. I think maybe that's why it has been
Yeah, and the
a
sort of
fun thing to,
secluded,
yeah.
limited space that and the pressure from the outside and what's going on inside, I think that makes it
Mm-hmm.
really really work, and it works well in the shorter sort of time slot.
Yeah. I also love the surprise cameos that showed up.
Yes, so that
Yeah,
that is
Those
my
have
love
cracked me up
letter.
every time.
yeah. No, we actually discussed that, or you. So
Yeah,
how many do you think will actually sort of catch it,
yeah,
and how many will just sort of, and
yeah,
it's fine, it doesn't, but I think it's fun to have little nods like that. I mean, we've
Mm-hmm.
seen the whole show, all 15 seasons of it,
yeah.
so yeah, yeah,
No, and it's very much sort of an inspiration also for
yeah.
how to build mysteries. I think. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
those investigative
There are definitely similarities
series
between
are,
that
yeah,
TV show and Vaesen. The differences, obviously,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also some similarities. So yeah, that
yeah.
was fun to have them
So
in
that
there.
was definitely my sort of love letter to that whole franchise.
Now, I know you probably can't share anything, but of course, since I've got you guys here, I have to ask. Uh, do you have any details from Niels on what that campaign following up on Dance of Dreams might contain? Uh,
Yeah,
That was
it's hard to say
he,
without spoiling. Actually, he's working on it right now, also, so I don't know all the details. I know some of
okay.
it. Obviously, I know the big, the main strokes of it. I know it will sort of reference some pretty famous actual people, so that will be interesting.
Okay.
And events that actually
But also
happen.
shed some light on sort of the society history.
Right,
Some
that
more
too.
light on
Mm-hmm.
that, even though there will of
Yeah,
course be.
I love how, because there is so much in the core book. There is in the history about the society. There are some parts of that are followed up in some depth in City of My Nightmares.
Yeah,
The
Mm-hmm.
whole Carl Linnaeus thing. So there's definitely one sort of thread that is left hanging in the core book that is followed up
Mm-hmm.
in City of My Nightmares, and then there is another thread
yeah,
that is followed up in Nils's campaign. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think they will both. If you have both of them, you will definitely get a
Get the
very
whole picture.
full picture of the whole thing, which I think is very cool.
Yeah.
And I think it's
I
taken some
absolutely can't wait
time.
for it.
Yeah, so it's cool to sort of. It's been a sort of a long game. I mean, the core game has been out for 5 years now, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that the plan has always been there. So it's sometimes things take a little time, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing.
Well, Free League is working on a lot of projects.
That is true. That is true.
Definitely don't like being bored.
Yeah.
Now, piggybacking on that, one thing I've always kind of wondered, was the intention always to follow up on those stories and those kind of threads? Or was the intention to have Vaesen just be a standalone book and say the GM can do whatever they'd like with this story, but here's some places you could go?
Yeah, I don't think we planned it to be. I mean, as with any game, you never know how it's gonna go, so you can't know
You
for
release it as a
sure.
standalone and hope for a game
You're right.
one.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
normally it sort of has to work as it is, and then hopefully we can do more. But it's hard to know that for sure from the get go. I think in there it's for Nils's campaign. I think he definitely had those ideas, and actually looking back, I can almost feel that the introductory adventure is perhaps almost too forward leaning because it really hints at some things, which has made,
Mm-hmm.
of course, players like, when are we getting the rest? It's like, yeah, okay, we actually never really.
We
That
never
was never
promised
really.
it. We just
We
said
never actually
eventually.
promised. Yeah, maybe so that so that. But I think the other thread that mainly you picked up on, it, the City of My Nightmares, that is more of a something that we found out and started sort of pulling that thread, or you
Mm-hmm.
mainly, a bit later on,
Yeah.
because we wrote other things before, like some mysteries in Wicked Secret and
Mm-hmm.
Seasons of Mystery and completely unrelated things. And then
But also,
you
I
started
mean,
digging into the
yeah,
Linnaeus story
yeah.
and all of that.
And I think that was maybe not so planned from the
No,
beginning. I
not
think
really.
it's
I
sort of
don't.
that idea also came about through a series of conversations with people, again
Mm-hmm.
at different conventions and other things, just asking about what is going on with that,
Mm-hmm.
and also the whole movement that has been with actually building your own society centers and going into that whole lore. I think it has been sort of back and forth,
Yeah.
the inspiration. So I think the Vaesen sort of line has definitely been inspired also by just having conversations with people, understanding sort of where this whole IP
Yeah.
is moving. So I think in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, it's not just one direction; it's actually bi-directional
Oh.
Yeah.
in that sense.
Uh,
And I was myself very intrigued about the Linnaeus story since I have I mean I have a background in medicine, and
Mm-hmm.
Linnaeus has of course been a very interesting person for me for a very long time. So I mean I think a lot of people have been sort of intrigued by
yeah.
so what actually
Right. I
went
mean,
on here.
yeah,
So
and
yeah,
it is. I mean, he quotes from Linnaeus are in like every chapter of the core book. I
Yep.
mean,
yeah,
of
Mm-hmm.
course,
yeah,
fictional quotes, but still, they're a lot of fun because they're very close to his actual quotes. Because
yeah,
he did these expeditions in the north of Sweden where
Mm-hmm.
he studied the flora and the fauna and things, and
and
he
also
wrote notes. And
folklore actually.
also,
Yeah,
actually, he did study local folklore.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So his role in actual life was not that far away from what he's doing in the game, and just
Mm-hmm.
following up on that, and actually going deep into that story felt like, when we started, like the very sort of natural thing to do, and something that felt very fun to dig into.
yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we have been a bit humbled actually by the positive response to Vasan, and the number of people that have felt sort of inspired and touched by it. I think that was it's never something that you can plan when you release a game, and it's always a bit of magic when that happens, I think.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's definitely
Absolutely.
part of it. Yeah.
All right, now I have one last question about kind of the development of the Vaesen line, and then I want to talk a lot about City of My Nightmares.
All right.
Two, of the most iconic Scandinavian Vaesen. The Troll and the Nisa both got mysteries featured, and Kiku, you got to write both of them. Did you pitch stories about these Vaesen during the writing process, or early on did you just get to call dibs and say, all right, I'm getting the best ones?
No. I mean, I think for me, writing for Vaesen was actually a bit of a. I mean, I sort of segued into that, and I think it was definitely me pitching. I think it was sort of late in one of the Kickstarters where you were looking for stretch goals, and I
Right.
had been sort of reading. So Vaesen has actually been one of my sort of childhood nerdish interests. So I was very much a supporter of that whole franchise, and I've been so I was sort of dying to have the opportunity to write something. So I think it was sort of a serendipitous event. So you needed something to happen for a stretch goal, and I was pitching an idea about. In that case, it was the Song of a Falling Star. So I think that was how I got going.
Yeah.
And then for the I'm not sure that the Nissan had actually. I think it was not one of the like popular characters to
No,
write
I was
about.
going
I
to say
think,
that. I think those are actually the hardest to write,
yeah,
because they're the Nissa is a sort of a homely is not a very terrifying monster, so you can't write your usual monster of the week thing, because
Yeah.
this thing is actually, the little
caretaker of the farm.
caretaker
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
farm. So how do you actually
And
write
yet,
a
I mean, if you go back in time, there are quite
right? They can be
yeah,
brutal,
yeah,
yeah,
they can be.
but it's I think from my perspective, you usually go for the more sort of those types of Vezin that you can actually reason with, or
Yeah,
that have some connection. And so I think both the trolls and the Nissa they sort of are on the far end from your more typical horror stories. So
yeah.
so it's I think
Like a
that's why maybe a
revenant or
lot
a
of
giant or something that's
yeah, those
just,
Oh
are
yeah,
in a way
ooh.
like a werewolf and
Yeah.
the ghosts. I mean, those are sort of known and easier maybe because they're so familiar. They're also very cool, but so I think actually I don't think there was a lot of competition for the Nissa.
no,
No.
and I think I also had. I mean, I sort of my agenda was maybe to write those more collaborative Vaesen stories because I mean some of the other authors also wrote like more classical
Yeah,
monster hunting sort of stories, and
or at least more horror
I
focused. Yeah.
so that was maybe on my agenda. I was also fascinated, I think, because I think that the whole phenomenon of having a creature that sort of protects and is also linked to the hearth. It's such an archaic sort of Vaesen to talk about, and there are variants of that also in my Estonian heritage and in sort of more Eastern European folklore. So I was. I think falling in that type of rabbit hole. I think when I was writing writing that story, but it's sort of fascinating to think about sort of this creature who is can get very old and who sees sort of generations of the same family. And I think what triggered that story was that all of a sudden he felt connected to this woman that is part of that story. So out of that stream of human beings floating past, in time, they was suddenly suddenly it was sort of an individual that he connected to and what happened with him. So that was sort of I think the seed for that adventure.
Fantastic. So I do want to make sure we've got plenty of time to talk about City of My Nightmares. I know it's a little late on your side, so I don't want to keep you up too long.
No, it's all right. We have a
Yeah.
little bit of more time.
Yes,
I
we
think.
do.
Okay, perfect.
Absolutely. Yes.
Without spoiling the plot for our listeners, could you share a basic description of the storyline for City of My Nightmares?
Oh, so the City of My Nightmares offers the opportunity to discover the Stockholm area in the mythic North and in the mythic 19th century. So you have adventures exploring different parts of the Stockholm city. You have adventures a little bit outside, but it really sort of depicts the society at that point. You have a lot of like interesting cultural elements with like going to the opera at that time, going to like theater, and there's also sort of a wink also to the political movement that is
Mm-hmm.
happening within the society at that time, because Stockholm was sort of teeming with people moving in from the countryside. I mean, it's sort of a bit of a link to your story Fireheart, where there was actually poverty. People were leaving for the US. They were also moving into Stockholm trying to find work. So it was a very exciting time in Swedish history for many
Mm-hmm.
reasons. So, but I think for me, the inspiration for that whole story and the campaign was actually sort of those like more romantic epic operas, where you get to follow a
Mm.
story arc about some person, and the four different adventures are really sort of four pieces into that mosaic of telling a story of a person and a family, sort of the ups and downs of that
Yeah,
of,
I think
of
this
that
is
Mm-hmm.
that story. Yeah.
the. I mean,
So
after
that's
the
the sort
Lost,
of
yeah,
frame of the whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, after the Lost Mountain Saga, this is the first book that actually ties together mysteries into a full campaign. I mean, the previous
Mm-hmm.
books have been standalone mysteries, which are a lot of fun, but this one, I think that was part of what was a lot of fun when we were writing it, mainly you, and just to sort of discuss and how to tie these stories together and create that longer story arc. And the other thing I think this book does is I mean, most of the traditional Vaesen adventures, you start in the town and you go out into the wilderness to solve something or discover something. And here instead you go into the biggest city around, and that's a very different atmosphere, which is a lot of fun. And it can work in other cities as well, even though of course it's focused on Stockholm. It's sort of just
Mm-hmm.
urban 19th century environment. It's a lot of fun to play around with, and a change of pace for the game as well.
And an
Yeah.
opportunity to sort of explore some like more gothic horror elements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think also just thinking about which Vaesen would actually, be interested in going into a city, and what would they do there, and how would they actually interact with humans in that way, was a big inspiration.
Mm-hmm. That was actually the next thing I wanted to talk about. Was the typical Vossen adventure is always going out into the rural countryside and seeing how modernization has kind of upset the balance of things.
yeah,
And this feels like it has thrown that whole idea on its head by going into the biggest possible city you could be,
yeah,
where everything is modernizing.
yeah.
So, did you find it challenging kind of switching that setting from that rural area into the city and still maintaining that identity to make Vossen feel like the Vossen RPG?
Yeah, it was a bit of a challenge. I think also practically just that it's easier to write a mystery or an adventure in a small place because there's only that much to actually explore. You have a small
Mm-hmm.
village, there's like five houses, so you can describe the five houses, and that's fairly easy. In a big city, you have, thousands of potential places to go within walking distance. So you have to structure things differently. So that was a challenge in itself, and of course also the theme of things. But I think you did a great job of tying these creatures and into the stories in a way that really works also for an urban environment.
Yeah, no, and I think also I, not all Vaesen. I mean, a lot of them actually have a very close connection to human beings and human culture, and
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of playing around with the thought of that. I think that some Vaesen would actually be drawn to big events because
Mm-hmm.
they have these chaotic elements within them that make them sort of interested in pursuing relationships and contact human beings, being part of that human society. So I think as people were moving into the cities, some of the Vaesen were actually sort of following along. So that was basically, I think, for me, something. So of course, not all Vaesen would maybe do that, but some would be intrigued to do that. And I think that there are, even in Swedish history, some like really old stories of omens and other things, when Stockholm has been in turmoil, that there have been sightings of different Vaesen within the city as a sign of like really upsetting times.
Yeah.
So I think that was sort of a seed for some of the inspiration for that campaign.
Now, the first chapter of City of My Nightmares was released to backers of the Mythic Britain and Ireland Kickstarter campaign as part of a stretch goal for that game to do kind of a city-focused adventure. Was it always the plan to develop the full interlinked campaign from starting with Scent of a Killer and into the rest of City of My Nightmares? Or did that adventure kind of get created and we're like, ooh, we've got something good here. Let's keep going with this.
I think it was more the second.
Yeah, definitely. I think
because I think I had the original sort of the idea to do something about like one mystery set in the city around like revolutionary times and things, and tie that to Vaesen and do something. But it was a very vague idea.
Yeah.
And then that sort of then we started talking, and that idea kind of grew. And then the idea was that we would write like 2 mysteries each, and I would still write this one. But then sort of because of, it ended
Thomas
up...
was a bit preoccupied with other stuff, so I started writing, and then it
you just sort of went with it.
Went from there.
So eventually you basically took that one over and then also built out the whole story. And I was more of an editor and someone to, but so, it definitely grew into its own thing. It was not planned to be a full book from the start, but it was so much fun when we started, talking about it and planning it, that it just sort of grew.
Yeah, no, and I think that the stories are. I mean, I am the lead writer, but I think a lot of the ideas have been sort of, pitched over tea or a glass of wine or something. Late night, just brainstorming and talking about like cool stuff that has happened within the city. I think I gave you a little bit of a headache because I'm not very good at conforming to the Vaesen template. I was like playing around a lot with like different formats,
right?
And Thomas had to just deal with that. I think.
But that's also a fun challenge, because it meant that the mysteries don't. I mean, I think it's good that Vaesen has a fairly solid structure for how mysteries are designed. But actually working within the confines of that and working around it and making things, I mean, I think that is a fun challenge and makes for interesting mysteries. So, in this book, without spoiling too much, there's at least one that does things differently in a way, in the structure of it. But it's still, I think, feels very much like a Vaesen story. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I love the whole chapter included in the core book on creating a mystery for the game.
Yeah.
Which is just so good. I go back to that all the time. I use like the bubble maps of, this clue can lead to this location. They can find a clue that leads back to this location they might have missed, and how it all interweaves.
Yeah, no, it is very good.
I have also definitely done more than a few research projects that then became I've got to add this and this. And I, of course, need to cover this. And now I've got a campaign and I meant a one-shot.
Yeah.
So, no, definitely. But there's also, I think, for me, this is sort of my creative outlet. So I think for me, it's there's also a lot of stuff that I have researched that never went into the adventures, just because I sort of, fell down a rabbit hole and started exploring something. I mean, for the Winter's Tale story, I think I listened to at least 3 hours of documentaries from Finland of old people speaking dead, Finnish Ugrian languages that are lost now. And that is definitely like a tiny detail in the book, but for me that was like really part of that whole writing process to dive down and really you know discover that part of history in a way. So
one of the things I've experienced a few times with adventure writing for Vaesen is I have gotten it done and said, okay, did this detail actually happen historically, or did I make that up, or did I modify it from history? I've done so much research, I don't remember anymore.
Yeah.
True. Very true.
All right, now another question for you, Kiku. What chapter of City of My Nightmares is your favorite to have written, and why is it the Haunted Library?
I think it is actually the Haunted Library, because I really like I really, well, first of all, I really love libraries. Those are sacred places for me. But I also think that it has a lot of layers because I think that it's sort of an intriguing thought to think about sort of libraries and hidden stuff within libraries, and also of course supernatural beings inhabiting libraries. So I think and in Vaesen and the society sort of knowledge and books and lore is very much at the core of something that the society is trying to rediscover. So I think that having access to like good reference books and other things is sort of at the core of that. It is also without sort of spoiling anything, it's sort of homage to a lot of like really nice books that I have read while growing up. So I think
there are some inspirations there.
Yes, a lot. So
and features a particularly fun cameo I'm very excited about.
Oh yeah.
Again, not spoiling anything, but
yes.
The only thing better than a library is a library that contains another secret library on top of that.
Yes. No, and it's also set in a house where the Free League hosts a convention each year. So it has that very sort of a very physical dimension as well. So it's actually being continued now. There are more stuff happening in the library.
We're sort of turning that house into a proper adventure hub or something. So it I think it's in 3 of the 4 mysteries in the book it appears, and of course this one it features heavily, and now we're writing a new convention adventure that we hope will be that is also focused around this cool building. So it's kind of fun, and that's where we have a local little convention here that's going to happen in October. It's set in that same actual house, so that's it's become like the Vaesen building or something, which is kind of cool.
Now, Tomas, you spoke about this a little bit before, but you were listed as a co-writer and the editor for City of My Nightmares. How was it kind of changing gears on this one? Did you find that you were much more focused on the mechanics side than the narrative side? And what was it like kind of writing a big campaign together?
I mean, like we already sort of touched on a little bit, but it's been a lot of fun and a lot of, topic for conversations throughout. It's been years now sort of discussing this book and what, and that has been just sort of spitballing, talking, bouncing ideas back and forth. That's been, I think, so much fun, and it's taken a long time, which is we didn't hurry this thing, and then eventually you realize, well, we actually also need to finish this book. We can't just keep talking about it. We also have to write it and get it done. And then you did definitely most of that. My role there was more of an editor, and I did add a few bits more on the mechanical side of things, maybe, which is normal. I mean, I do that. I do the same in many other books and games that we publish. We have great freelancers, but sometimes you sort of have to sort of tweak the mechanics.
It actually works this way. Or,
exactly.
You got the page reference.
That stuff. So I focused on that in the final production side of things, whereas you did, the whole story arcs and the characters and all of that. So I think overall it's been a really cool collaboration. Of course, in the end, I had to be, a little bit strict of an editor as in any other projects. Like, no, you actually now you have to finish this thing. Well, this here doesn't really work, and then we
you've
can have
been at least strict with me
at least,
with anybody else.
So that's been also been interesting, but so far it's been okay. Yeah.
Right, and my last question for you: what are you both most excited for players to encounter in City of My Nightmares?
Oh.
That is a good question.
I mean, I'm just generally curious about what people will sort of do within that setting, and I'm also curious to sort of hear feedback on, I mean, those elements of like society lore, and what will that bring? Will I mean, my hope is that it will sort of enrich their playing in other settings as well. Hopefully, I hope that there will be some like nice surprises throughout the book. There are some twists and plots and turns that
that's always
I really enjoyed writing, and I hope that other people will sort of find them and enjoy them.
Yeah, so. And they can encounter you as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're in the book.
Yeah. They can.
There's
a cameo.
There's a little Kiku cameo in there. Yeah.
Yes.
There was actually meant to be a cameo for me, but in the end, that character took a different turn, so it's not really me anymore. But you're still in there, in a way.
I'm still in there, yeah.
And Tomas, what are you most excited for players to get to experience with City of My Nightmares?
Yeah, that is a very, very good question. I think actually the Haunted Library is an interesting one, just to see how players take to that, because it is quite different, both in structure and content. It sort of stands out. But also I think the whole way, if you play through all of it and see it come together, that's always so hard to do in RPGs and campaigns, because there's how much do you reveal, how early, and how does that come together in the end, and that's always really interesting, and sort of hear how did that play out for you and your group. Sure. I think that's very cool to see, at the end, how did it all sort of play out.
Fantastic. Well, I cannot wait to share my experiences with you once we've gotten it run at the table.
Oh, yes.
I am so excited for this adventure, and I cannot wait for more Vaesen. As soon as y'all have a Kickstarter, I am going to be there day one, every time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
And after we've wrapped recording, if you want to drop any hints about what Neil's writing, I will be glad to listen. I will get detail. Promise. Mum's the word.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you both so much. This has been absolutely wonderful. Listener, go out. Make sure you check out City of My Nightmares and Mythic Carpathia, which has a brand new Vaesen archetype I'm excited to share with my players.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it does.
And this has been such a pleasure. Thank you both
thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Spirits and Monsters of Old Seattle. Our theme song is Myths and Legends by Robert Bruckmeyer and is playing right now. Our episode music is from the incredible Andreas Lundstrom's RPG soundtracks, and you can hear more of his work on the Sweden Rolls podcast. Our editor is Hannah Cheney. If you've enjoyed the show, it would mean the world to all of us if you could share it with a friend, or an acquaintance, a stranger, even an enemy. We're not super picky. However, it is the single best way to help us get new listeners and continue to grow. If you've really enjoyed the show and you want to let the world know just how much, we're launching a storefront where you can buy some cool gear and a Patreon. You'll find the links in our show notes. We'll be looking forward to sharing more stories of the Vaesen in the Pacific Northwest. But until then, remember the motto of the library. Fear gives way to knowledge. Knowledge gives way to wisdom. And wisdom gives way to the truth. Until next time.